Hello everyone, it is Joe here from Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon, and today we're going to be starting off with our new deck updates, thanks to the post Primal Clash being released. As you can see, I've opened up my box, and those were the quote-unquote best pulls. Obviously ignore those two in terms of best, but we're going to start off with a deck that I like to play now, and I've been testing with a lot lately, and I actually really like this deck. There's not many new cards from Primal Clash in this deck, but a few things have really given it a boost, and that's Empire, a deck that's revolved around big Stage 2 Pokemon, setting them up and attacking for just 1 energy each turn, so that's pretty awesome. So let's show it off now. We're going to start off with 4 Miltanks. These are very important in the deck. They have 100 HP, so they're good to throw up in the early game because they are obviously much bulkier than your Piplups and your Dusknoirs that you play. So if your opponent's going to hit into anything, you'd much rather them hit into a Miltank turn 1 or 2. And his attack is also amazing. For 1 colourless energy, you do 10 plus 70 more damage if you have a stage 2 in play. So hopefully from turn 2 onwards, we're going to be hitting constant 80s with Miltank. And of course we can use stuff like Muscle Band and Silver Bangle to make that even more damage. And what's amazing about Miltank is we like to use him so that stuff like Empoleon can stay safer on the bench, so that we can set up 2, 3, sometimes even 4 of them, and they can all be safe until the late game so that we can keep our draw engine and stuff alive. Next up, we're going to play the Empoleon line, of course. We have 4 Piplups. This is probably the best one to play. It's the Legendary Treasures one, the shiny collection thing. Because it's Charm, you can reduce 20 damage done to it next turn. Not often that's going to come in relevant, so you can just use the normal Legendary Treasures one. If you are thinking about building this deck and you don't have 4 of these, don't worry too much about it. It's not too important, but this one is the best one to go for if you have access to all of them. And obviously you need to max this out because you play a thick line of Empoleon, and he's the main thing that makes the deck work, so you want to have access to your Piplups. At the moment we're playing 1 Primplup. I've definitely considered adding in a second one because of the prevalence of Seismitoad EX, stopping us being able to use Rare Candy, and because of that, against Seismitoad we can only get out 1 Empoleon, because of course we only have 1 Primplup. So, next up we have 4 Empoleon. Diving Draw is the life and blood of this deck. It means that we can get into hands of 10, 12, sometimes even higher, quite easily, quite consistently, and it just opens up all the options for the deck. Diving Draw is absolutely fantastic. Also, he's a great attacker. 10 times the number of Pokemon in play. 120 if both your board and your opponent's is full up. And sometimes decks like Donphan and stuff, they love to fill up their bench, and they sort of need to for their strategy to be pulled off. And Empoleon can really capitalise on that. Of course, he's a water Pokemon as well, so that does nicely against Donphan regardless. But he's just very, very strong. And with Bangles and stuff like that, he hits big damage. Next up, the main supporting cast for this deck. It's another Stage 2 line, and it's going to be Dusknoir. So we have a 2-1-2 line of Dusknoir. There's your Dusclops, and there's 2 nice shiny Dusknoirs. I really like the art on this Dusknoir. Hopefully there's not too much glare on it. Sinister Hand allows us to move damage counters around our opponent's board however we like, giving this deck a real control aspect, and meaning that every single damage counter does not go to waste. It's always very crucial in the game, and we can maximise our potential with all the damage that we put onto the board. That's what's really good about the deck. Miltank hits 80, and with Muscle Band we can do 180, so that's killing all EXs. And of course, if your opponent's going to start using Mega Evolution, it's going to be a new feature up and coming with Primal Clash. Well, not a new feature, but it's going to be much more relevant because we have good Megas now, all with Spirit Links and stuff. It means that we don't really need to take the 2 prizes on something with 240 HP. We can just swing into those things and then move the damage around to take cheaper prizes on like their bench attackers and stuff. So Dusknoir is really nice. It's a great way of cheating how much damage we actually do. No single damage counter is wasted, and that's what's really strong. So that is the Pokemon. Actually, we've got one more. We've got 1 Execute. Propagation is absolutely essential in this deck. It means that we can use Diving Draw for free. We can Diving Draw away an egg, Propagation it back, Diving Draw, Propagation, that whole cycle. We run high counts of stuff like Ultra Ball and stuff, and the egg once again comes in handy. It means we only have to discard one actual card and then the egg as well. So this is absolutely essential in the deck, and it's just a fantastic guy. I love using the egg. On to trainers, we've got a comp search. It's just for consistency. You know, you want to find your rare candies, you want to find your Empoleons as quickly as possible. Once you get your draw engine out, i.e. the Empoleon, you're pretty comfortable all game. So comp search outclasses stuff like Dowsing Machine in this sort of deck. Next up for switching cards, we've got one Escape Rope. This is the new Escape Rope. One of the only trainer cards that I got from Primal Clash. I really did poorly on my pulls for trainer-wise. And we also have one switch. Only 2 total switching cards. Miltank isn't really hit with poison and sleep for often, because normally he'll just be knocked out each turn. But we do have some bulky stuff in here, and if we need to move stuff like Dusknoir, it can be pretty useful. Again, the Escape Rope is just a way of moving your opponent's active Pokemon, and because we have Dusknoir as well, we can force your opponent into something else, and then move the damage onto that new thing, and then kill it with the extra damage from your actual attack that turn. It just makes good combos. It's not quite a Lysander, but I don't actually have space at the moment for Lysander, so Escape Rope's my best sort of solution in that regard. 2 may seem a bit low, but we do play Lysander's trump card, which means that if ever anything does get stuck active, you can trump card these guys back. Next up, we have 2 Startling Megaphones. Very essential. We have a massive ability focus in the deck. Even though our output stays the same with an Empoleon setup, we don't have that diving draw, and we really do need that to get a constant stream of Miltanks and a constant stream of energy going. We run like a low energy count, and if you don't draw into it without the Empoleon, we can sort of struggle with our output. So we need these Megaphones so that we can get rid of Garbodors, and so that we can get our draw going basically, and on crucial turns we can use Dusknoir to kill a Garbodor after we've Megaphoned. Also, of course, like I say, Megas and Primals, they're going to be important, and if you can get rid of Spirit Links in the opening turns on your opponent's field before they've Mega Evolved, it can be very frustrating for them. Also, and stuff like that, it can get rid of like boosters and random occasions. If they want to booster into an Empoleon, you can just stop them doing that. 2 VS Seeker. Obviously, VS Seeker's fantastic. You can use the porters when you want to in the late game. Pick whichever one you want. VS Seeker's really good. The reason why I only run 2, we have so much built-in draw with these Empoleons. Honestly, you get 2-3 out every game consistently, unless you're playing against Seismitoad. And VS Seeker and supporters in general, after the first 2 or 3 turns, they become fairly irrelevant. So there's no point in running more VS Seekers, in my opinion. Next up, we've got 3 Ultra Balls. Just find anything you want. Also, we get to discard. We can discard the Execute early on, so that we can reuse it with Dive and Draw however we like. Ultra Ball becomes really cheap in the late game as well once an egg is in there. So it's really good, and obviously you want to find your Empoleons and stuff early on. Next up, we have a card from Primal Clash that really makes this deck a whole lot better, and that's Dive Ball. I hilariously only pulled 1 in an entire box. Don't know about you guys, but it seems like pull rates were absolutely horrible for these cards because of the size of the set, 160 cards. So very difficult to get playsets of these sort of things. So I've got 3 proxies here. As you can see, foolishly, I went to get the gold proxy and then did it in black and white, so it just looks rubbish. But 4 Dive Ball, search your deck for a water Pokemon, put it into your hand. This is absolutely fantastic for getting your Piplups out early, getting a little army of Piplups going, so that if your opponent's going to Lysander and take a cheap prize early on, we're not screwed for a couple of turns swinging for only 10 with Miltank. We're more likely to have a fuller bench of Piplups. Also, of course, it's another 4 outs into getting a turn 2 Empoleon, and that's what we're all about in this deck. Once Empoleon comes out, everything else sort of seems to fit in place. Next up, we have 4 Rare Candy. I'm choosing to use Rare Candy from older sets. There is a reprint of it, so if anyone's not got hold of 4 Rare Candies, you can use the newer one if you want. I only pulled 2, and because I'm a bit OCD, I like to play 4 copies of the same card. So when I get 2 more of the newer Rare Candies, I'll switch them in. But for now, we're using the old Rare Candy, and it's, you know, blatantly obvious why you want to run Rare Candy in this deck. For tools, we're running 1 Muscle Band and 2 Silver Bangles. Obviously, we want to increase our output, and pretty much Bangle does an extra 10 against all EXs. There's of course the chance that you don't play against EX decks, and that's why we have Muscle Band in here. Only 3, we're always going to get good value out of these cards. We need to do that extra damage sometimes before Dusknoir's even hit the field. If we've hit 80 turn 2, and then turn 3, we can just attach a Bangle or a Muscle Band to take 2 prizes, even before Dusknoir's hit the field. So that's pretty important, and of course it's just extra damage that Dusknoir can manipulate, so really worth putting in here. Also bear in mind we're playing Trump card, which I'm about to show in a minute, so you can splash these down pretty happily, and if they're going to get megaphoned or anything, you can still get value out of them in the later game. Next up for supporters, like I mentioned, we have Lysander's Trump card. This card is absolutely fantastic in this deck. I think this is the most powerful I've ever seen Trump card in this deck, because he just works so fantastically well. You can diving draw, 2, 3, 4 times every turn and not even give a damn, because you have Trump card. You can recycle your entire deck. You can have a hand of 25 if you want to. If your opponent's not going to end you or hasn't for 2 or 3 turns, your hand can get absolutely ridiculous. You're holding everything you want in the world, and you don't have to worry about all this discarding and how much you're running for your deck, because Trump card gets it all back. Obviously it gets back all your Pokemon and energy as well. This is something we sort of missed with the lack of Super Rod that we have in the format right now. Sacred Ash is a bit weak in comparison, but Trump card gets back all your energy and all your Pokemon at the same time, which is fantastic. It also gets back your 4 rare candies, so if you've spent all of them on other stuff and you're sat with just a Piplup on the bench, you can Trump card and get back these candies. Like I say, you can Trump card and then use like 3 or 4 diving draws, so you're likely to draw into whatever you want, or a way of getting whatever you want after you Trump card. So that's absolutely fantastic. I love Trump card in this deck. He's absolutely crucial. I've thought about bumping him up to 2, because if he's prized you can struggle with this deck and you have to be a bit more conservative about what you want to do with the deck. But overall I think it's fine at 1. We have VS Seeker if we ever need to reuse Trump card. I've never had to use him twice, but every time I have used him, it just really sets up the game. You've got everything you need, all your switching cards, you've got your extra output cards, you've got everything you need to carry on for the rest of the game. And Trump card's really strong. Also it can slow down decks relying on the discard, like metal decks with Bronzong and stuff. Also sometimes Kyogre, if they've lost a few energies, they're looking to get multiples back with superior or regular super energy retrievals, and we can prevent that, so they actually have to physically draw into those waters all over again. It can be kind of disruptive, and of course stuff like Flareon that likes to have a big old discard pile full of Pokemon, we can put all of those back and really disrupt them in that way as well. So Trump card, great for so many reasons in this deck. Next up we have 2 teammates. I was so upset I didn't pull any teammates out of 36 booster packs, but we're only running 2 in here. It's a deck that I like running at 2 because most of the time we want to proactively search our Empoleon. We don't want to actually have to have lost a prize to find our Candy Empoleon combo. But in those certain situations, teammates is there. We can just grab whatever we want, and of course we have VS Seeker, so mid to late game or whatever, we lost a prize, which happens, up to 5 times before we lose. We can teammates and really capitalise, get whatever we need, get another candy, get your Dusknoir online, anything you want. Teammates is absolutely fantastic. The reason I don't play more, like I keep mentioning, Empoleon is good enough to draw on his own, and obviously teammates isn't great early game, and I'd rather be using other supporters in the early game, so we have higher counts of those, and then teammates is there in a 2 of with the VS Seeker to target it in the late game when we need to. Next up, 3 Skylers. This is just a great way of getting your candy or your Ultra or Dive Ball for whatever you need. Skyler's just fantastic. Just the best way of getting your Candy Empoleon combo off, pretty much. Then we have 3 Ns, and Shuffle Draw, still important, is your comeback card. If you've lost some prizes early on, it can be really strong, and you never have to worry about your hand size going down, because you can draw back 6 more cards that turn with 3 diving draws pretty comfortably. So N, always strong against your opponent, never a worry for yourself, so that's really good. Finally, for supporters, we have 4 Sycamores. He's just the strongest supporter that we have in terms of draw. Normally he's an early game user and never really in the late game, because it means we'd have to be dumping like an 8 card hand for 7 more. Not really worth it, but he's just so needed in the early turns to try and get that combination of Rare Candy and Empoleon. Finally, we have 7 water energies. It's all we need. We have the trump card, we can recycle as much as we want, and everything in the deck attacks for 1 energy. So that is the deck. It has a lot of control, and it may not seem all that powerful, but the fact that your opponent has to take 6 actual physical prizes against you is very good, and it's difficult for your opponent to deal with, especially when we have Dusknoir taking cheap prizes on stuff like, you know, Bronzors or tech attackers that Kyogre like to use and stuff like that, and really take prizes when we need to, on what we need to, making it very difficult for your opponent to set up stuff on the bench and stream their attackers sometimes. Also, if we just smack into the face a couple of times and your opponent can't really consistently deal with these Miltanks, 2 or 3 of these in a row can be quite difficult to deal with. Sometimes we just catch up to them really and beat them that way. Especially after we end them once or twice, they can miss an energy drop and then it's really in our favour. The game's just won from there. So it's a very, very good deck to play. The one bad matchup I would say we have, Garbodor is always fairly difficult, but if you can draw into your Megaphones, it's never too bad. The worst one is just Seismitoad. Seismitoad really does suck. It's like we're limited to 1 Empoleon. Sometimes we're not even allowed abilities either if they're playing with Garbodor, which is sort of getting popular again. Also, Dusknoir, sometimes we can get it out, sometimes we can't. We just don't have enough ways of finding him without trainers. So one thing that has been put into an Empire decks in the past and could probably get thrown in once again is a Leafeon line. I would probably run a 1-1 or a 2-2 with this guy. Energy Crush, just so strong against the Toad. They can't really deal with it. You could play it with still just the 7 waters. You might want to throw in 1 or 2 rainbows. That's getting really creative. But it means that you could evolve Leafeon immediately under Trainer Lock. And that's probably required if you actually wanted to strongly counter Seismitoad. Also, it's actually very strong against Kyogre. And even though you probably won't one-shot with this Energy Crush, will put so much damage on that board that Dusknoir can just have a field day from there. So a 1-1 or 2-2 Leafeon line, if you can find space, because it is very tight, this deck, if you can find space, potentially put in a 2-2 line of the Leafeon, I would suggest that. But for now, that's just a list to go off, just a pretty plain list, how I would play it for now. But if Seismitoad gets big in your area, I would definitely look to add 1 or 2 Leafeons, in my personal opinion, to deal with that. So that's my first deck list of post-Primal Clash. Not a real Primal Clash focused deck, I'll be honest with that. The attackers have all come out in previous sets and all that good stuff. Only really Teammates and Dive Ball are the things that this deck gains, but I feel like those 2 cards on their own is enough reason for this deck to come back in a big way. And not many decks like to deal with completely non-EX focused decks. We've seen that with stuff like Donphan. People can really struggle with it. So I hope you enjoyed, guys. Leave comments down below about this, and maybe suggest a few decks as well that I can come up with. I've already got a list of, you know, 10, 15 decks that I need to profile post Primal Clash. But tell me what you want to see first down in the comments below. I've been Joe from Omnipoke, and I will see you guys next time.